So one of the things when I reached out to InterNACHI about this and had the opportunity to discuss and share some insight, one of the biggest things that I've always struggled with in the past was finding time, right? And identifying time. So over the years, I've been able to put some systems together and come up with some good ideas for how to manage that. And I just thought I'd share those out with everybody. So we put this together right around maximizing profit, saving time, and avoiding burnout. Um, how do we manage our schedule? Are we a slave to it or do we master it? Sometimes it can be a little bit crazy and we can lose our minds over it. How are we communicating with our clients and our agents? In a perfect world, you know what? It would just, they'd send the message in, the answer would go back. You know what? And we're probably really close to that when it comes to AI and stuff today. But how can we go about automating that and taking that off of our plate? And then, can we work less and make more money? Everybody's chasing the dollar, everybody's trying to figure out how to do it. So just some strategies that I've developed over time to, boost income, and the efficiency and the way around getting that increased income. So, whether you're just starting out, you're buried in those backlogs and you got so much going on, hopefully we'll come up with some things today to help you work a little bit smarter, not harder, and gain what I'm going to term as wealth. And we're going to talk about wealth and a number quite a bit through the next little bit. So a bit about me, as AJ mentioned or asked, I live in Canmore, Alberta, a nice little mountain town just outside of Banff National Park. We're currently a town of about 12,000 people. New development has just been approved after a 30+ year court case, which is a whole other story. But we're looking at getting 12 to 15,000 homes built here, or doors. There's going to be multifamily, single family, over the next 15, 20 years. So for a home inspector, it's a bit of a dream. Start small and just continue to grow. But if you look down the screen, I've got my roles on there. I'm a certified master inspector, certified professional inspector. I've been going at this since 2017. I'm the office manager. I'm the marketing manager. I'm the scheduler. I'm finance. I'm the guy that orders shirts. I go get a haircut every once in a while. I got to call my kids. I got to take a vacation. These are all things that we all have to do every day as a solo inspector and, just as a regular human being in our personal lives. So, it's a lot, and every single day something else gets added to it. And it can become quite overwhelming. So everything on that page plus so much more. And it basically boils down into these 5 pieces for us, right? We're overwhelmed with schedules. Sorry, and I'm overwhelmed with a fruit fly or something right in front of me. Late night reporting. Why are we writing reports at night? Nighttime should be sacred. That should be our time. That should be our family's time, right? Endless follow-up calls. We all know it starts off sometimes with 1, 2, 3, 4 phone calls from our clients or an agent asking questions about the inspection. What does it entail? What do you inspect? I always joke now that there's a little bit of a millennium vibe, and that's just going to show my age, right? Where you get them on the phone and they start asking, the first question is, can I interview you about being my home inspector? In the past, it used to be, yeah, you know what, just read my Google reviews and we'll go from there. But that's not really the right way to approach it, right? So constantly with phone calls. We end up with a little bit of time maybe left over for our families, for rests. Try to plan a vacation. My gosh, my first year of business, I had 12 days off in the entire calendar year. The following year, I had 2 days off because you're constantly trying to go after that business, right? So as a solo inspector, I always try to reflect on this just about every day. Do I want to strive and keep growing? Do I want to look at expanding? Can I expand? Can I bring somebody on? Do I want payroll? Do I want contractors? Do I just want a technician that can go out there and do things like radon for me? So that's a bit of a struggle. And then that weighs on your mind too. And then that causes stress, that causes anxiety. And then, the next day the phone doesn't ring and you get a little bit worried. So, you kind of put it on a little bit of hold. And then you get 3 or 4 days in a row where it's absolutely nuts. So it's just this endless cycle, right? So how do we get to that? And do we really want to grow? And do we need to grow? And do we know why we want to grow? So simple. Anytime anybody talks to me about this, and I've been very lucky, I work as a mentor with InterNACHI, and I get calls weekly from people wanting to be a home inspector or people that are just starting out and are trying to source things, information, try to figure things out. And I always ask them, why are you in this business and why do you want to get busier? Why do you want to grow, even be it as a solo inspector to do more inspections or to maybe start adding that little bit of staff? And people always come up with, well, money. I need more money. I got to pay bills. There's things like that. And yeah, money is there, but in my mind, and something that I've experienced over the years, and maybe it's because I am getting a little bit older, there's money versus wealth. And when we look at wealth, really the four types of wealth are, we got financial, we got social, we've got time, and we've got our physical, our personal wealth, which is our health. I look at all four of those becoming what wealth is to me. And I've taken money out of the equation, I put wealth into the equation. Um, but to know that and to get there to that wealth, we need to know something very, very basic, and that's the number, right? And do you know what your number is? Are you clear on what your number is? Is it a number that's just chasing a dollar, or is it a number that's getting you to wealth? Because when you have wealth, you've got a little bit of financial freedom in there. You've got your social life added back in. You've got time for so many things. And your physical health, everything just improves when we take away, that anxiety part of it. Because as a solo inspector, we are very limited in the amount of money you can make, right? Like, if you're really efficient, you've got this all figured out, you're banging out 4 inspections a day and you're charging X amount of dollars, that's great. But that comes at a cost. So, have you sat down and figured out what the number is that you need? And that's kind of where it caps if you want to remain as a solo inspector. You really can't do any more of that and be comfortable with it. The constant pursuit of more equals burnout. Um, I can tell you, doing 700 plus inspections a year, 800 plus inspections a year, 1 year close to 1,000 inspections, burnout is a serious, serious concern. And it decreases wealth because it takes away from all those things except financial. And you know what? Money cannot buy happiness. It's a great way to get you to happiness, but it can't buy it for you, right? Um, and this job demands a lot. And if we're not careful, it can get very, very tedious on just chasing that dollar. So, I caution everybody that if you want to be a solo inspector, you sit down and figure out what your number is. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a second. But don't chase your bank account, because chasing your bank account will give you a false sense one day of security and how much money you have. And, oh, I can go out and I can buy these new tools, or I can go on this vacation, or I can go and do this. But then as soon as it dips below a little bit of a line, the anxiety kicks in. I hope that makes sense. I don't think we've got anything going on chat wise. Okay, so, oh, my mistake. So how much do you really need? Okay, do you have a budget? Being a solo inspector, is that budget just for your company, or is it for your personal life as well? They are seamless. So if you have a budget for that business, there better be an expense line in there for paying yourself, because without that, you're only feeding the machine, you're not feeding yourself, because what you earn is it. I run into a constant conversation with my wife around this. My wife has had an amazing corporate career, but she has always seen payroll as something separate from expenses. She works on expenses all day long and she manages all these different groups, but her payroll always came in. It wasn't ever a thought. And it's really taken us about, the last 6, 7 years for her to now realize that every time I go to an inspection, that's payroll. X amount of dollars goes to taxes, X amount of dollars goes back into the company. And then whatever is left over, that's what we get. And when that number is in the red, my anxiety is going through the roof. And she's like, well, yeah, but there's a paycheck coming. And it can be a little bit of a challenge. And thank goodness she retired a couple months ago. And now she's like, oh my gosh, if we want to do that, it's this number of inspections. And that's how we equate our life. There's a person that's on here, one of the participants that's watching this, that I know very, very well from a long time ago, and she's probably heard it over and over and over again. Anytime we want to do something with a previous company, was, okay, we need 2 inspections, or that's only going to cost 5 inspections. So you need to know, what are all your expenses? What are all your wants? What's your average inspection fee, right? You divide those out, and that's the number of inspections that you need. I know it sounds super simple and it's remedial, but if we don't pause and think about it at the beginning of every year, whenever our financial year is, and we don't visit it quarterly, monthly, um, we need to know what it is, or we're going to constantly be thinking about it and fixating on it. And that's a little bit of a curse of working by ourselves, right? So then you need to figure out if you can actually accomplish that working as a solo inspector the way you're operating today. Does it make you enough money? Can you actually get through it? Are you banking what you need? And if the answer is yes, and I look up at the participant count at the top on the screen, and you're already there, use this opportunity to buy some time back and exit out. I don't want to waste your time. You don't need to waste your time. If you've got an hour blocked for this and all of a sudden you're like right there, that's going to give you some of that time and some of that freedom. And that's what this is all about, is how to figure out what we need to do to get there and be successful, managing our schedule, automating systems. We're going to touch on that, and strategies. And those strategies all turn into something a little bit bigger and a little bit wonderful that turn around and give us our time back. Okay, so to do that, systems plus hustle equals less stress. This is something that I firmly believe in. Um, a long time ago, and I almost just said decades ago, but it truly was decades ago. I keep forgetting, that I'm in my mid 50s. But when I first came out of high school, one of the first jobs that I got, other than, working in the bar and the nightclub and having all the fun, was I went and worked at a large commercial bakery. And it was super crazy that at 18 years old, I sat in a classroom for 6 weeks. I didn't learn how to bake bread. I didn't learn how machines worked. I didn't learn anything about flour, yeast, any of that kind of stuff, cleaning. That all came after. The first 6 weeks, we actually sat with a company out of Japan that these guys had flown in. And if anybody is familiar with Lean Six Sigma, this was kind of we were at the precipice of the cusp of this, I should say, when it was just really starting. So it was 6 hard weeks of figuring out what needed to be done and how, as a group or through processes, each individual could do their job. Had nothing to do with the actual job itself. It was, how do I get from point A to point B in the most efficient way? How do I ensure that point B is safe when I get there? How do I step back to point A and make sure when I'm looking at point B, nothing in the way is a danger? And it just went on and on and on and on and on like this. So that the second we went out and started production, every step we took and every thought that we had was ingrained into our brain through repetition and process so that we knew how to execute it. So you know what? We all do that with inspections every day. We open up our app, our book, whatever it might be. There's people out there still using paper. It is what it is. If it's efficient for you, it's efficient for you. But when we get to that site, we know exactly what we're going to do and what our process is. Where our process gets messed up is when we get a phone call, or we have a leak, or the client is talking to us constantly, or the agent is talking to us constantly. How can we mitigate those things, get rid of that stress, follow the system, hustle through the job, and make that work, right? So a big part of it is our planning, our training. We're going to automate stuff. We're always going to improve so that we can hit that number. And a big piece of it is, what do we do when those distractions come up? And those distractions, I'll keep pulling back to it. It creates stress and it causes anxiety. I know on a day, if I'm doing 2 inspections, okay, great. If I'm doing 3 inspections, I'm kind of okay. If I overbook and I do 4, every phone call, every text, whether it be from my best friend, from my wife, from another client, that text message is the worst thing that could possibly come up on that screen. So how do we deal with that kind of stuff, right? So by developing the process, and I keep talking process over and over and over and over and over again, that's where we're going to go. And that's going to help us hit our number. Okay. So it's funny. AJ and I were talking before this happened, and he was like, "Hey, just make sure we don't blow through this in 5 or 10 minutes. We got people committed to an hour, and we're 15 minutes in. So if there's anybody that has questions, throw them out. We're going to end up with a little bit of time. Um, so what can we do to work smarter? So tasks. Tasks in my mind are things that we have to do either monthly, weekly, daily, both for work as in our personal lives. Okay. So if it's work, okay, we've got a little bit of marketing to do. We've got follow-up calls with clients. We've got to do our schedules. We've got to do our banking, all those things that have to happen for the business to survive that are not part of an inspection. Okay. We've got our personal time. Um, we used to always joke that if a cancellation came in, that meant you could go get a haircut. You could go buy groceries. You could go home for lunch instead of eating through a window, whatever it might be. Over time, I've learned those need to be scheduled. So if you're not putting those into your calendar and they become a little bit sacred, you're in trouble. And we're going to touch on each of these a little bit more in detail as we go. Automation. We are in a world now where, we have to do very, very little ourselves once a system is set up. Um, Inspection templates, right? If you've got a great template, think about it as automation. You don't have to write or type anything in that you see at an inspection. You just click it, point your camera, take a picture, annotate it, say where it is, move on to the next thing, instead of having to type out everything or write down everything every time. So that's really familiar to a lot of us. But is communication automated? Um, it is for me in a big way. I do not like to I don't like to talk to people unless I'm face to face with them. It's kind of a little bit of a trigger for me because the world that I came from in the past is if my phone rang, it was an issue and it was something to deal with. And I still like, I don't know if I've got post-traumatic stress from it or what it is, but it's really tough for me to open up an email or a phone or sorry, a text. And it starts off with something because I always read, you did an inspection for me. And and then I'm like, what is the next line? What's the issue? What's going to happen here? 99% of the time it's, and I just have a question about something. Um, okay, I'm just gonna pop this open. I don't know if I can get to the screen here or something. Nothing. Somebody's just typing random things in the chat bubble on me. Um, so automating those communications, bookings and pricing. If you don't have software that can do these for you, where the client can just be directed to go online and do it, it's just one more headache. I probably book physically talking to a client 3 out of 10 times. The rest of it is if I get a text message from them, there's redirection. If I get an email, there's redirection. The majority of them just go right on my website and book online. Sometimes it's an agent, sometimes it's a client. But getting people to your site and having the ability for them to book through there is absolutely golden, right? Because every time we have to ask them a question, they have to get back to us. And then we have to ask another question, and they have to get back to us. And we have to ask another question. And a lot of times it gets lost in the middle of that, or there's a time delay, or you're in the middle of an inspection and you just can't get to it. And then you lose out on the potential business. So automate as much as you can. Okay. Lastly, to work smarter, and I've always lived in a business world, pre this, post this, I will still have a business mindset. And it can be really, really simple. It's, do you have a plan? Do you have a budget? Do you have a strategy to get there? Okay. If you're small and you're just a solo inspector, it could again just be that number of inspections you need. You figured it out. You could just check them off every day. You could just go in and check them off, and you know you'd be fine because you know how much you're going to make, you know how much you're going to spend, you know when the money's coming out of the bank, and you're good. So it can be super simple when you do it that way. Okay. So a couple of scheduling strategies for solo home inspectors. The one that I live by no matter what, and I encourage anybody who's a solo inspector, whether you're just starting out or if you're just ticking along, you'll be able to adjust it if you're banging them out, you know exactly what you're doing. Set fixed inspection time slots. Leaving an open calendar for people just to go in and book whenever is the quickest way to reduce the number of inspections you're going to do. You think people are going to go, oh, you know what, I'm going to miss, or you're going to think to yourself, I'm going to miss out on this inspection if somebody looks at my calendar, I only have 9 a.m. and 1:30 available. Okay. There's probably a small chance you're going to miss out on that inspection. Very, very small chance. But that leaves you the opportunity for those two inspections in a day. If you have somebody go in and they book an inspection at 11 o'clock, and all of a sudden it's an inspection that's going to take you, 3.5, 4 hours, 4.5 hours with travel time, there's your day, and that's one inspection. If you're somebody like me that travels a large radius, the next closest city to me is an hour drive. So if I'm going to drive there, drive back, that's 2 hours out of my day. If I do one inspection in one area, one inspection in the other area, it can get pretty cumbersome. But by booking those slots, you've now allowed yourself the freedom and I guess the time to, again, lessen the stress, lessen the anxiety. You've got time to get to the inspection. You've got time to do another inspection. If somebody calls you and says, hey, I see you've got 1:30 available, can you do it at 2? Yeah, absolutely. I can do it at 2, unless you've got that pre-scheduled task, right? It still leaves you 3 hours before that magic 5 o'clock if you want to cut that off and get your evening back. Okay. Batch similar tasks together. Reserve the time. We talked about this before. Put it in your calendar. If you're writing reports and you're writing them at the end of the day, you know what? Maybe you can only work until 4 or 4:30 at night. You don't want to be writing reports at 8, 9 o'clock at night. It's just not worth it. Been there, done it. Will absolutely never do it again. Okay. Follow-up calls. Yeah, you probably got to call a couple clients back in the evening. That's just the nature of our business. They've worked all day. They've got their stuff going on. So they expect us to do it and we're going to do it. But it's a couple of little calls. If you've got administrative stuff, your banking, your bookkeeping, whatever it might be, this is something else that can be somewhat automated. I do all of my, let's call it bookkeeping, with Google. I do everything in Google Drive. I have a Google Sheet that I created years ago with my budget on it. It has an expense tab. If I stop for lunch, I buy a new tool, whatever I'm doing, I don't have to go home and do anything. I take a picture, I drop it into the expense folder I've created in Google Drive. And from there, I just enter in the number and it's done. There's my bookkeeping. I don't do month-end bookkeeping. I don't do weekly bookkeeping. I do bookkeeping as I go because it takes 20 seconds when it's right at your fingertips and you just open it up on your phone and it's right there and it's done. And now I don't have any stress of going back and trying to figure it out later on. I don't have to pay a bookkeeper, a few $100 to do it. My accountant is just like, oh, click, click, done. Or I just send them the link at the end of the year to that file and it's there. Super easy. You can do those at the end of the day versus, putting them into the middle of your inspections, right? You can use that time to eat, to travel, to be safe. Just automate it, make it quick and simple. Leveraging online scheduling. Same as what we were talking about before with having things booked into slots, right? Make sure it syncs with your calendar. I know this sounds remedial and basic, but I do talk to inspectors a lot of times that even they're using software. I talk to inspectors that are using Spectora, which I'm one. I've used 3 over my time in this industry. They're the one that I've landed on. I sync it to my Google Calendar. It's all there. It's all seamless. So my personal life, my business life, it's all on one screen. Everything can be seen. Somebody calls me, it's quick and easy to see where an opening is, or I just shoot them back to my website. We'll talk about that in a second. But it's there and it's live and it's real time. If you are trying to write things down and keep notes, you're absolutely sunk. It's just not going to happen. Build in buffer time. So yeah, the other problem is if you leave open schedule or open time on your calendar or your online scheduler, What if somebody books an inspection at 9 and you've got a certain amount of time built in for that inspection, preloaded, and the next person comes and books one right as it's done? Did you go back when that person booked that first inspection and make sure you block some time off? You shouldn't have to, right? So if you have an inspection window and your typical inspection is going to take you 3 hours, book it for 3.5, book it for 4, whatever it might be. That's your travel time booked in. Um, you can tell your client it's going to take 3 hours, but your calendar is going to tell you that it takes 4 hours. And again, now you're not rushing. I've been guilty of it. And when you got to drive an hour to get to your next inspection just because of the city locations, that throws in a lot of work. Now, instead of taking a break and a nice leisurely drive, you're scrambling, trying to tell that agent or that client, I'm going to be late. I'm really sorry. Then that weighs on you because who are they going to tell? So buffer in time as much as you can is absolutely huge. Protect your personal time. All right. Um, Down below that, burnout is real. We often have to experience it to believe it. That comes at a cost. I came home one night and my wife told me, "You are a complete jerk. And if you don't start booking time off of work, we're done." And that was hard because I thought everything that I've been doing was building this great life for us, but I wasn't building anything other than a bank account. I wasn't building wealth. I was actually chipping away at wealth. I was taking away time and I was skipping, medical appointments, dental appointments. I was missing stuff with my kids. You've got to build it in. The only reason you're going to work is that you can do stuff, pay bills and do stuff, right? What do we got coming up here? Um, if you're going to book it, I will tell you, um, have a hard cutoff time at night. And every client you talk to, when you're doing your recap with them at the end of an inspection, I always joke they can call, text, email me anytime, just not after 8 o'clock. If it's 7 o'clock, if it's 8 o'clock, if it's 9 o'clock, whatever it is, you set that hard time. And when that agent that you deal with, 20, 30, 40 times a year calls you at 9 o'clock and your cutoff is 8 o'clock, shame on you because you have not set the boundary with them. And after that amount of time, they should know what it is. There is nothing going on at 8 or 9 o'clock at night in our world that's going to be an issue. We shouldn't be doing a home inspection as a way to make or break a deal, right? We're just reflecting on the house. Here it is. If they have questions and they waited till their condition date to have the inspection, and you've told them I'm not going to be available after 8 o'clock, you're not available after 8 o'clock. Your report should be able to read it. That agent should understand and respect that, because the first time you answer that call, and I don't know, you can choose to do what you want on this. This is just my hard and fast rule. If I answer that call at 9 o'clock, they're going to call me tomorrow at 9 o'clock. They're going to call me the next night at 9 o'clock. And then I'm just spinning into burnout again because I don't have that time and I'm ignoring my wife and the dog's peeing on the rug because I haven't taken it out, right? And my screen is not moving. There we go. Okay. So you did the math at the beginning of the year. You've reviewed it quarterly. You've reviewed it monthly. You know what your number is. That right there to me, and hopefully to you, should be freedom because now you know exactly how many days you can take off. You know you can take vacation. You know you can book a dentist appointment. You know you can go see your kids play at school or whatever it is. I have my oldest daughter is getting married in 2 months. Actually 2 months today, and I'm not stressed one bit that I'm going to be gone for 9 days. I know what my number is. I've made my year already, and I know that based on my relationships and setting boundaries with people, that I will get the calls on the day that I get back. They're not going to go find another inspector, and they will be armed every day that I'm off with the number of another really good inspector that knows to expect calls from my clients. So it's partnering up and it's covering your butt. Again, I talked about my first year, 12 days off. You know what? Unbelievable. Grump was not even close to being the word to describe it. But I'm not going to type the 4-letter word that does describe it. But if you know your number, man, that's freedom, right? It's you're not chasing anything at that point. Okay, automation. We talked about this. So find time wasters, change them into time savers. Every single thing that you do that takes time can be reduced. About the only thing that we cannot reduce comfortably past a certain point are our home inspections. The amount of time you need to take to do that inspection. You have a really good idea what each one is going to take based on the age, size of the house. You've looked at it online. You've talked to the agent, you've talked to the client, you have a good idea. You don't want to rush that. You do not want to cut that time down past what you know you can do it in properly, because then we get sued. And there's a couple different ways of looking at inspections. And I had a new inspector the other day talking to me, and he said something really interesting, and it kind of hit home. And I'd never want to think about my business this way, but he said, we should be doing inspections with one thing in mind, and that's not getting sued. And I was like, interesting. That's probably about number 10 on my list, because if I'm doing everything properly, I'm not thinking about it. But you don't want to save time to the point where it's detrimental to your inspection. Everything else, we can find a way to do it. Pricing, I am a big believer. If you have online scheduling, or if you have all your prices written down on a notepad, set it and forget it. Do not nickel and dime the client when they call. Have a set list of pricing. That's what the price is. Maybe it's based on size, maybe it's based on age, a few other little categories, but don't sit and look at it and try and figure it out. You should just be able to pop the number off your head. And then when you get to the house, you're like, oh, crap, I just left 50 bucks or 100 bucks on the table. Tell you what, the next one is going to make it up because it's going to be less than what you priced it at. So set it, forget it, and just move on. Okay. Scheduling, we talked about this already. Set times versus an open calendar. The open calendar is great in larger companies when you've got capacity and things like that. Or if you're just not worried, if you're just happy doing one inspection a day or maybe two inspections a day, and that's enough, a couple times a week, leave them open, and then you work with it from there. Client and agent communication. This should almost all be fully automated. If you have a software that sends out all your communications, great. If you're willing to pay a little extra and have it send out communications when only one thing is triggered, great. If you, just have the bare minimum, great. But what I'll tell you that really helps, and it helps me, and when we're solo inspectors, right, our number gives us so much. So how do we reduce costs as well too? I use a lot of pre-made templates and emails. So if I get a text from a client that's anything about an inspection that's not super easy, I just pick up my phone and I respond back with the letters RTC. And in my mind, that's reply to client. And it automatically populates with a list of everything that I need to know to be able to book a home inspection for them, with instructions on how to, what to send me, what I need. I have another one that says reply to client E, and that's reply to client's email. And that will just have my email asking them to send me more information if they seem like they're not going to do texting very well. It happens. More than not, I will just direct people to my website. Okay. I have another prompt in there that's just WEB for website. And that will send them, say, here's directions with a link to my website. And it's a link directly into my online scheduler page on my website. And just say, hey, fill these items out. It'll price it for you. You'll see the time slots that are available. And if everything is working great for you there and you click OK, it's going to automatically confirm that inspection for you. We don't have to go back and forth with times. We don't have to say, okay, what does your agent have to say about this time? What does the seller have to say about this time? And then we're waiting and we're waiting. And in the meantime, we've held that spot. We've missed out on another inspection. It's like, you know what? It's all on my website. When you get there and you have it sorted out, if there's a time available, it's there for you. And it's so super simple. I have a ton of email templates built. Google is really good for this. So if you use Gmail at all, or others, I'm sure, I just happen to use Gmail. I have a lot of templates built out. So when an inspection is confirmed for a client, and then when I get around to it and I look up the listing and I see, oh, wait a minute, it has a fireplace. I offer fireplace inspections. right? And if it's for insurance purposes and stuff, we got wet inspections here in Canada. Um, so I will just drop into that template and I can bring it up on my phone. It just sits in my drafts. I enter in their email address, their name, and I just shoot it off and it's done. And in there, it has a link back to my scheduler again, or sorry, their online portal with Spectora, and they can just select that fireplace if they want it. Easy. I give them the option to reply back to me, but I said to make it quick and easy, just click this button and away you go. So easy. Automate it. If your system's not going to do it for you, if you don't want to spend the extra money on something like that, take a little bit of time, create yourself some emails, ask ChatGPT or OpenAI or whatever it is that's called today. I'm terrible with that stuff. Um, but it can write those emails for you, and then you can just go in and critique them and you're good to go. Because if you take the time to automate it and then just let it run, it's so liberating. When somebody goes in and you just see it pop up. Since we've been sitting here, I've had one, two, three, I've had three people book inspections since we've been sitting here. I've never talked to them, probably don't know who any of them are. But they just keep popping up on my phone. And that's as good as it gets because they saw the price, they saw the time, and they still selected it. Okay, pricing strategies. Okay, we have a finite number, right? We know how many inspections we need to do. We know how many inspections typically we can do based on that, right? A little bit of experience, a year or so under your belt or more, you figure out the seasonalities, come wintertime, you're not going to do a house starting at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. So, you're probably doing 1 or 2 inspections in the wintertime as a solo inspector. But how do we price properly? And the way I look at it is your competitors do not set your price. Where I live, I'm in this nice little mountain town, and an hour away is a huge metropolis. That area's average inspection fee is $200 to $300 less than the average inspection fee is in the town I live in. The reason for that is where I live, the average home price is for a single detached home is $1.8 million. Okay, the average apartment condo I do, and keep in mind if anybody's in the US, these are Canadian dollars. The average apartment I do is $750,000, and that could be a 600 or 700 square foot apartment. Okay, so it is very easy for me to say I want these to be my prices. They are what they are. If I tried to price like that in a larger area, people would be like, "You're never going to get the business." And I heard that when I first moved to that area a few years ago, is you got to lower your prices. Nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to do it. Nobody's going to do it. I tell you what, I charge the exact same price in both cities, and I'm not hurting. I'll lose the odd one because we always know there's an inspector out there that's willing to undercut. But the way I do it, more so than not, is by creating pricing packages and using strategy that way instead of what is the cost of a home inspection? Okay, the home inspection, let's just throw it out and say it's $455 because that's what it was in one area for a while. If you go into my online scheduler, I always start off with an apartment condo because it is the lowest price and I hate it, but our systems will always say, starting at this or whatever. And you don't want to start off with, oh my God, the price is $1,200. But when you start going into categories in my system, it starts off with that $1,200 inspection. We are too easy to say pricing starting at, fees starting at. I can tell you since I started doing this, and it's been a little over 6 months now, my average fee has gone from $455 to $750. So my average inspection ticket inside of 6 months jumped $300. And my goal for 2026 is to have that at $1,000. I know without a doubt there will be times where it's going to be less. And you're just going to do it. And it is what it is. And because you set your price and you forgot it and you just moved on. But people tend to pick those packages. So here's kind of where I've positioned it. I look at, and we all look in our industry, that ancillary services are additional income. They are. Because we're in the home inspection business. Why are we just in the home inspection business? Why are we not in the business of satisfying the needs and wants of our clients. Okay. Something I learned a long time ago working in retail, a really long time ago, was never assume that the person standing in front of you or talking to you is going to spend money based on the way you think. Okay. I learned this. I was 21 years old. I was working in a Home Depot store and just freshly married. And everybody in the world that I talked to was in the same position as me in my mind, but they're not. And a lot of people, and I've had a client who's a great example. He showed up to a house driving an old, beat up Hyundai Santa Fe. This thing was rusted out. And I had to do a double take because I thought he was just some stranger pulling up because the house I was inspecting was $6.5 million. And I had charged this guy a huge fee, probably one of my biggest ever. And this guy who got out of the car was the client. And I was like stunned. And this guy is a legit billionaire, just buying a vacation home. And this is the car he drove because if he drove it, everybody left him alone. So price based on what you could be offering and think about yourself as the consumer, right? I want to go in. I want this house inspected. I wonder what the air quality is like. Oh, it's got a fireplace. I wonder if that needs to be inspected. Radon's become really big, right? It's being pushed all the time, all over the place, stuff like that. So I have an all-inclusive package for home inspection. That's the first one on my list. And it includes my standard home inspection, which is what we all do, right? It's a home inspection. We use our thermal camera, we use moisture meters, we do all those things that we talk about. That I'm not sure if they mean anything anymore, right? In the past, oh, you're gonna do thermal? Is that extra? Well, no. Today's world, thermal is part of an inspection. So, I price that at 1,275 bucks, and then we add on 5% tax where I am. So it's not cheap. I actually get about one of those a week, which blows my mind, and nobody ever complains about the price. Um, I have another one called air and fire package. So this is just a little bit less, right? And then I have the standard one, which covers a lot of different things. I'll do a detached home, I'll do a half duplex, bigger townhomes. Like I'll kind of all lump those into one because I know I'm going to make up the money somewhere else. I'm not really losing anything. And then a bunch of other ones in between. And I just take the whole guesswork out of the client going, hey, do you do this? Do you do this? Can I add on this? It's like, what, let's just start off with everything. And so many times, that's exactly what they do. And inclusive should not be spelled with a C. Look at that. I should have spell checked this thing before I before I logged on. So don't look at just your ancillary prices or ancillary services as additional. Take some time, play with some numbers, put them all together, and then maybe peel things away. There's a really, really good home inspector that works in the Calgary market close to me. He's been in business a long time. It's just him and another gentleman. He prices similar to this, and he's been doing it forever, but he takes it a little bit more basic. He does, if there's a home with a finished basement and a garage, okay? A lot of times inspectors out there, they'll price the home, they'll add on a little extra if there's a fully finished basement or a suite and then a garage. What this guy does is here's my price. And when he gets there, he's like, oh, I didn't have to do that. And he gives people money back. He gets a lot of really good reviews over it and people talk about him all the time. I would have a really hard time giving money back once it's in my bank account. Plus, it's a time suck. It's a financial nightmare for bookkeeping. And it's not automated, right? Like giving money back on random inspections, there's some work to that, right? So think about it that way. So what happens if we don't work smarter? You're being a solo inspector. You want to take time off when you can. That's why you got in the business. You want to have some big bucks. You want to spend them, all that kind of stuff. But if we lose sight of the business and we start getting into it and we're working the business versus working on the business, it's just going to run you into the ground, right? I'm really hoping that, at least maybe one or two takeaways from this for you folks. It's advanced or I'm adding on to it every day. I'm doing things differently. I'm constantly revising, those automated emails, things like that. But I tell you, if you focus on the business and you focus on doing it in a way that you're looking at your wealth versus just your bank account, you will reduce stress and anxiety. If you know what that number is, um, you don't have to worry about it. Every time that bank account dips somewhat and isn't constantly going up, you know it's enough, right? And enough means something. There is so much to do in the world. There's so many places we can go. There's so many things we can do. There's so much time we can spend with spouses and pets and kids and all that kind of stuff. Um, if we know that number, we can do it and we can eliminate that stress. So, finding anything you can to help yourself work smarter, to automate, to communicate easier with your clients, to take the stress out of it, that profitability will go up. The profitability may just be financial, but I really hope that that profitability is wealth for you and it's time for you and the people you care about and the things that you want to do. That's really what it should be about. So, um, yeah, gaining your schedule, getting control of that, better relationships with your clients. And it's funny because a lot of clients, the more they can do themselves, the more they feel they're involved in the process. More wealth, less stress. That's really what it's about. Um, yeah, AJ, that's what I got.
Until next week, have a good weekend, guys.